Hi, in this video I am going to show you some techniques on how I like to do ropes in Zbrush. Quite a straightforward way. I've done it for a while and I think it's quite easy to do. So if we look at Zbrush here, we've got a model that I've been working on, well, the arm of a model that I've been working on. And now these ropes are really thin and small, so they don't actually require that much detail because it's going to be a game character, but they're quite thin and quite rough twine type rope. And there's quite a lot of bits here, like it's quite detailed, so however I'm going to do it needs to be at least fast enough not to take up too much time. And it didn't feel too arduous, so I'm going to show you how to do this technique. So let's dive right in here and see how it's done. So first thing we need to do is make our master rope mesh. So we can just click on a cylinder here and use this, and what we're going to do is just scale it up a little bit so we have some length to it, and this needs to be a poly mesh, so let's just click on make poly mesh 3D. Okay then, so now this is poly mesh 3D. We want to turn this into, well, something that looks like a rope. The main thing I want here is the spiral up the rope, so it's that deep crevice. Now as I go through this and Dynamesh and stuff like that, that's going to kind of get obscured, so it's the main kind of goal here is to keep that nice crevice in the easiest way possible. And well, there's a few different ways to do it, but this is the way I like to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go out of perspective mode and hold shift and snap so that it's side on, and I'm going to now that this is Polymesh 3D, I'm going to go to move by hitting W on the keyboard, and I'm going to hold control and grab the one of the directions and grab one of the arrows on the gizmo and just drag to the side. This will duplicate that mesh and mask the other one, but keep it in the same subtool. So if we have a look here, you can see it's the same subtool. If we click polymesh on, it's the same polymesh as well. And then I'm going to hold shift and snap to top view, and I'm going to do the same again, holding control, this time grabbing a corner of the gizmo and just moving here so that it's just touching the other message. And I don't want to intersect too much because, again, I just want to emphasize this crevice here. I want to keep that as deep as possible. So as I work my way through this, Dynameshing them together, there's less chance of that line being kind of obliterated. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I can just drag out to get rid of that mesh. I'm also going to just make these polygroups. So if we have a look, this is all one polygroup. So if I go down to polygroups and hit auto groups, we can now see we've got 3 different groups. That just makes it easier to select one, holding control and shift in future if I need to. Probably won't, but you know. So now that we've got these 3 here, we can make the spiral pattern, make it look like a rope. So I'm actually going to drag this out a little bit further, make it just a tad longer. And then what I'm going to do is go to deformation and then go to twist. And then we want to twist in the Y, I think, and then just hit twist. Now if you see, if I do that now, it's going to just twist the other 2 around the original one. That's because we've not reset the working pivot for this. So if I just undo that and go to transformation, I can come here and go to S pivot, set pivot point. Now that should set the pivot point in the center of the subtool. So now if I do twist, it'll twist equally around that center. So now let's give these a twist, and I want them to kind of line up. So one to line up with the next one underneath. So we go something like this. You can kind of see that edge of that one there lines up with the edge of that one. So that should be enough. This is going to be sculpted and Dynamesh together, so I'm not really bothered about being that neat with it. So we've got a bit of a twist here now, but there isn't much geometry. So what we could do is go back to this stage and hit subdivide in geometry to get a little bit more to work with. And now we just delete the lower, come back here and go to twist again. We get a little bit more of a smooth twist. So 60 should give a nice rotation for those to line up. We can always test that by just hitting control and dragging down and seeing, yep, that lines up pretty nicely. Undo that. Okay then, so the next step here is to kind of, well, it looks a bit crappy at the moment. So we need to inflate this out a little bit. So we can come down here to inflate. Now inflate will do a pretty good job here, But because these are all separate meshes still, inflate balloon will actually work a little bit nicer in bunching those up. So we just increase that until we get something we're happy with. Now I don't want to go too far at this stage because, like I say, there's still a lot of sculpting left to do yet and stuff like that. Now I'm pretty happy with that, so let's subdivide that a couple more times to get rid of some of those hard edges. Nice and smooth. I'm going to delete the lower subdivisions. Okay, and then I'm going to just extend this a little bit because my rope is it's more like twine, I guess, so it's not as tightly rolled, but thicker, heavier types of rope, you might want to have those spirals a little bit more tight. So this is good for me. I'm happy with that. Let's just check that it tiles okay. Yep, that'll do. Now the next steps are really up to you. You can work on these strands individually because they are separate, or you can Dynamesh them all together now, make a longer piece and kind of keep them as smooth like this. Mine are quite rough, and so I just want to relay the next few steps is just really introducing some variation into this. So to start with, I'm going to go over them individually. So I'm just going to Control Shift click one, and I'm going to go to Clay Build Up, and I think I'm going to change the brush alpha in this, and then I'm going to run this down here and just add some kind of unevenness to it. Okay, so now I'm going to extend these up a little bit, and then I think I will use the Orbs Crack brush. So I would suggest to save this, especially at this stage, because as is, this can be used as an IMM brush on a curve so that you can draw a rope straight onto an object or a character. That's not the way I'm going to be doing this, but I will probably do a tutorial as an addition to this that shows you how to do that. But the way I'm going to do it is a little bit different. So the next step for me is to Dynamesh this together. So what I'll do is just duplicate it and hide the other one. Then I'm going to hit Dynamesh. Now, when I've hit Dynamesh here, you can see it's actually really, really dense, and I don't want it that dense, but the resolution is quite low. That's pretty much because the size of this is quite large. If you see, it's 4x4, and ZBrush likes this to be 2. So what I'm going to do is go down to Unify and click Unify, and this will just resize this to something that ZBrush prefers. Now if I go back to Dynamesh, you can see it Dynameshes a little bit more of a realistic resolution. So I'm actually going to just increase this a little bit so I don't lose all my details. That's good enough for me. Now I'm going to again just duplicate this upwards. So I just need to reset my pivot, unlock that, lock it again, and then holding Control, I'm going to drag this up so that it intersects nicely like that. And I'm going to do that again, and maybe one more time. Okay, and then I'm going to Dynamesh all that together, and then I want to just kind of paint out the seams that are left there. So now I've got a nice piece of rope. So my next task here is to make this a little bit more uneven and random, because like I say, this is going to be a rough twine, so it needs to have a little bit of randomness in it. Don't want anything too noticeable, because you know that it is going to be repeated quite a lot, and although you can get away with a lot, you still don't want something that's kind of super obvious. So all I'm going to do is fatten some strands and make some others skinnier, and just kind of make the overall distribution a little bit more uneven. By the time you've wrapped it around the wrist, it's going to be quite uneven anyway, but a little bit at this stage helps. Then I'm going to go back down here to inflate and just crease that inflation a little bit just to sharpen up those edges, and then go back over this, just adding some more randomization into the strands here. And you could do all sorts at this stage. You could even make some wispy bits sticking out. Depends how much detail you really need to go into. This is probably too much detail, to be honest. Like, it's not only just what it is in your character, but it's like what will be picked up by the normal map. By the time this is UV'd and put on your UV map and then baked, how many pixels has it actually got compared to everything else. Is that it's a tiny strand on the character and you can't afford to have its own texture map, then, you know, are we really going to see any of this with 2 pixels? So you need to be sensible, but also it's kind of fun to do, so swings and roundabouts. And again, my strands are kind of a bit more stylized and are running kind of up the rope, but you might want to do something that's a little bit more realistic and have the strands kind of wrap around, so that if it's a massive rope, then you've got like multiple ropes that are all bound together. This is quite simple. Okay, now I have something like this that represents the kind of look I'm going for, but to be honest, this is actually more detailed than I would normally put in at this stage, because I like to go over all of this once it's in place to kind of make it look a bit more random and unique. But here we have this anyway, and we can make it longer so that it looks like less tightly bound and thinner twine. We can even make it tighter, make it look a little bit more heavy duty. So we can append the rope to whatever we want to put it on. And the next thing I'm going to do is just duplicate this so that I've got a spur. And I want to make this as long as I'll need it for the arm. So first of all, I want to kind of guess how thick it will be. So I want to make this pretty thick, but kind of still loose and crappy twine, something like that. And so now we need to kind of guess how long it needs to be. So this is the tricky bit. And what I'm going to do is hold Control and just drag this up and kind of just do what we did before and make this longer. So I think that will do. Probably a bit too long, but we can always snip it off once we're done. So we need to Dynamesh that together again. Just smooth out those creases if you've got any. Sometimes you get some, sometimes you don't. Depends how you've sculpted it. You can definitely make it so it's almost invisible straight away. Okay, so you know, there's a few steps there. It's all really simple, but you do have to repeat yourself quite a few times. But this is the reason I really like to do this, and that's this next step. So again, I'm going to duplicate this. So let's center this pivot, and then I'm going to roughly line it up with where I want it to be. So I'm just going to place it across the back of the wrist here, in the middle. Then I'm going to go to the cog, and I'm going to hit Bend Curve. Now, I want to increase the resolution so that there's just 3 points at first. So the first point is on the back of the wrist. I'm going to move the other 2 points around to the front so that they touch the front of the wrist here, whilst keeping this one still at the back of the wrist. Then I can increase the cursor resolution a little bit, and then bring these 2 out either side of the wrist. So basically I'm making a loop from these points. And I'm doing it in this kind of very, very rough way without increasing the point resolution really high, because it allows me to just try to stop any errors as they occur. You can easily get like flipped or rotated or twisted edges or something like that, and kinks and stuff, and I find that just creeping up on the resolution that I need bit by bit actually helps. So at this point I can then come back to my resolution and just increase it one more time, and then go over them and just make it more round. And there's also lots of other settings to use as well, so you can squash and stretch, and you can rotate individual points as well. So really, really powerful and useful tool. And I'm not bothered about where they're touching here, because I'm going to either hide that with the knot or I'm going to sculpt them together. And I'm going to make this look like it's wrapped around the arm twice, but I'm not actually going to spiral it, because I can just hide the intersection pretty easily. So to do the next one, if we just go out of the gizmo now and duplicate it, these vertex points aren't going to stay in the same place. It's going to treat this as one entire bounding box, and what you'll have is vertex points that run right across the middle, and so that you won't be able to manipulate these properly. So to keep the vertex points like this, the curve points should I say, we can just duplicate this and then go back down to just the simple 4 points, and then move these up next to that one. And I'm going to do the crossover like here near the thumb, and alt click on the other one, the other rope to go back to that one. So you can see how the points are twisting a little bit and causing some ugliness there. So you can try and get that out by twisting the rope, moving it around a little bit. It'll twist as it moves. The worst case scenario, you can just kind of smooth that section off and re-sculpt it again once you've finished. And I think it's the being able to go up and down in this by scaling the curve points resolution. Just that's what I think makes this so kind of satisfying to work with. You feel like you've got quite a lot of control over what's happening, unless, like I find with doing it with the curves, I find it more likely that I'll make a mistake and then have to kind of start again, or it'll go awry very quickly. So this just always feels like it's quite a lot of control over what I'm doing, so a lot less frustrating. The only thing you've got to be careful about is losing these points, so don't really stop doing this until you've finalized it. And if you're finding that you're getting a little bit wibbliness because you've repeated this a few too many times, you can come down to the smooth here and just smooth everything off. And that can kind of help a lot. Okay, so next I want some smaller bits wrapped around these. So I'm going to go back to my original piece, and I'm just going to cut some pieces off this to use. So I want a little piece that I can make into a donut. So I'm going to just chop a piece off by just selecting it, going to split and split mask points, and then just Dynameshing that, and that'll close the holes at the bottom. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing again. I'll go over this until I've got it to a place that I'm happy with. And so once you're happy with that stage, you can then go through each one of these and Dynamesh them again and add your final level of detail, breakup, variation, and whatever else to kind of get rid of some of the repeating patterns in this and make them look a little bit more unique. So I like to just maybe build up some of them using the clay build-up brush, and then again using the orbs cracks, put some nice separation of the fibers. And here's the final result, which took around about an hour to do. And bear in mind, I've been doing this as a tutorial, so I've been speaking as well. So it'd probably take less than an hour, maybe 40 minutes to do this. So I think that's pretty good for what looks like quite a complicated result. And you could keep taking this as far as you want. You know, it depends how much detail you put into it at every stage, what you want from this, whether you want it to be more realistic or more stylized. You know, you could go in and use the same technique to add further smaller wispy bits coming off it, individual broken strands. It's really entirely up to you. So here you can see the same technique I've been using to do this thicker rope as well. So I hope this has helped some of you guys. I think it's quite nice results for the time and effort it takes to actually do. So I will probably do an additional tutorial on adding this rope to a curve. If there's anything else you guys would want to see, just let me know. So I will see you then.